budget speech was cancelled. It was an unprecedented moment. First time in democratic South Africa that a budget speech gets cancelled. It's now been moved to the 12th of March, according to the pictures on my screen at the moment. And I need to chat to somebody who I trust with everything when it comes to money. He does a money show on 702 and Cape Talk, and someone that I've been wanting to chat to for a very long time, because for the longest time I've been doing this show and then watching him on TV, and now we can chat together on radio. Stephen Grootes, welcome to the Flash Drive.
Carl Wastie, it's my privilege and honor. Good afternoon. What circumstances?
Wow, it's great to have this chat now. I think it's important. You and I, we're equipped for this conversation. So that's why we need to just have a quick one. It's cancelled, and it happens, and it happened in such a quick way. And I have been provided the information that's, of course, embargoed before. This was supposed to happen at 2 o'clock. And now this thing gets shut down out of nowhere. So I just need a clearer picture as to how this came to be.
Sure. So what this is clear to me now is that this is a fight over whether or not VAT, the price that you pay in tax that's added on every good, whether it's a beer or whether it is something, as simple as nappies for your child, that basically the government wanted to increase VAT by 2 percentage points. That's value-added tax, and that would have taken it to 16%. And this is where the Democratic Alliance basically said no. Now, there are a couple of arguments about this. The reason government would have wanted to do it, as you know, is that government's basically been running out of money. And in some ways, the US President Donald Trump's sort of refusal to continue to pay for PEPFAR, these are people living with HIV/AIDS. We have to find the money for them. You have to get the money from somewhere. And VAT increase is technically very easy to do. So it's sort of low-hanging fruit. The problem is that even though it taxes everyone equally per thing you buy, in practice, the richer you are, the easier it is, and the poorer you are, you end up paying tax, and poorer people end up paying tax on stuff just to eat. So it's not a great tax for a country like ours, generally speaking. And so the Democratic Alliance is saying, we refuse to accept it. We always see the budget speech in Parliament and the National Assembly from the minister, but what we forget is that that budget speech has to be voted on by Parliament. And so the DA said, we will not vote in favor. You won't have the votes to do it. And this has taken us to where we are now.
All right, cancellation happening now. We move to 12 March. But let's look at the situation as it stands. I watched the proceedings, and a number of honourable members stood up and they were asking questions, one of which was very intriguing to me. What happens to government spending now? Because it feels like there's a freeze on what can happen in the future. So what does that mean for government spending?
So in the short term, for, as I understand it, at least the next 6 weeks or so, nothing changes. So the hospital that you went to today will still be operating. The doctors will still be paid tomorrow.
Okay.
The same for police, things like that. All of these entities, so provinces, for example, have their own budget cycle. And you mustn't forget that, provinces in the Western Cape for you will obviously pay for health, for hospitals, and they'll pay for education as well. Your police officer is paid by national government through a separate budgetary process that would come from the finance minister. So as I understand it, and this is where it gets quite technical, so the 12th of March still gives you 3 weeks to sort things out after that, because it's really by the 1st of April, I realize that that's April Fool's Day, but by the 1st of April, you kind of have to have everything sorted out. The voting actually can still happen after that. In the short term, though, and this is the important thing, is that government services are not affected. That's really what you need to know for the moment. So, unfortunately, your children still have to go to school tomorrow.
That's... Okay, they have to sort that out with their parents. But here's the thing. I also saw a headline earlier, and please talk to this for a second. The Rand is now being impacted by what has just happened. That's how sensitive the markets are. So for a layman to understand what this means, with the Rand being immediately affected by the budget speech cancellation, what does that mean for a regular KFM family member?
It means that anything you buy that comes from overseas, like petrol, for example, will be more expensive. And that can be anything. You buy an electronic good, you buy a car made in China, you buy anything that comes from another country, goes up in price. Carl, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
All right.
Because you would expect the Rand to kind of fall through the floor. Now, let me just explain the reason for that. Markets are looking for stability. You want to put money, so markets are always about someone else's pension. So I'm a fund manager. I'm taking Carl's pension. I need to put it somewhere where I know Carl is going to be safe because Carl's going to live to 105 and he needs that money, right?
Yes.
So I'm going to look for a place where I know the government works. There are going to be no shocks, okay? I can't put it all in Switzerland because that's too expensive. So I'm looking at South Africa. I'm thinking their government's fine. It's a coalition. It's all going to be okay. Oh, wait. Now I realize it's not all okay, and now I don't know what's going to happen next, and so I'm going to take that money out of South Africa and we're going to put it somewhere else. That's basically the mechanism. I must just say, though, we're quite lucky that this is happening at this time because investors around the world are looking for places to put their money where it is safe. They are buying gold, and so gold hit a record high again today, and because we produce so much gold, still the rand is being protected slightly by that.
Okay, this is, I suppose there's a bit of golden light at the end of the tunnel in a way. But let's just look at that light at the end of the tunnel, or perhaps the reality. So next 3 weeks, in your expertise, what happens now to the consumer? Is it just business as usual? Is that what we can expect? Or do you see some people who have more financial savvy having a bit of a knee-jerk reaction and starting to move things around? What do you see happening in the next 3 weeks before the new date for the budget speech?
So I think the next 48 hours will be crucial for our markets to see how investors are going to react. The rand's only lost about 10 cents to the dollar, went from about 18.45 in the seconds afterwards when I captured that number to 18.54 now. You've got to look at what shares do over the next kind of 48 hours. The reason is that investors are still looking at this and thinking, okay, I need to just consider what it means. And they're going to watch the Finance Minister, Enoch Godongwana, has just finished a briefing. They're going to watch what the other political parties say. In fact, the minister is still speaking now that I say that. So they're going to be looking at that. They'll be looking at what the president might say. I mean, do we have another family meeting? Also, what do the opposition parties do? And they'll want to have a complete picture. So that'll take a little while to form, but probably I would guess by kind of Friday afternoon, you'll get a sense of how they're really feeling. Look, things move quickly. Trump might well move markets again in another direction by then. South Africa might still be seen as a better investment than Poland, which borders Ukraine, which borders Russia. So, you've got to take all of those things into account. For the moment, life continues. The things I would watch are the communication between, I'm presuming, the DA and the ANC over getting this budget passed, what they come up with. And then don't forget the DA is not alone in rejecting a VAT increase. COSATU and other bodies, and I suspect maybe some members of the ANC caucus would reject it too. And then, if we don't have a VAT increase, fine. We still need money for people living with HIV/AIDS, unless there's another major readjustment in our government somewhere. To put it another way, Carl, the jobs you and I do are much easier than being finance minister in the Republic of South Africa.
I know that. That's why we enjoy our jobs. We love it, but it's good to be a part of these conversations just so we can equip anybody who is interested, who has some sort of a connection to it. I think this is very, very important. So I'm glad that we can have this conversation, and I'd love to have a conversation like this again, but I'm sure we'll hear this on Cape Talk later anyway.
Indeed, absolutely. A lot more to come, and of course on the Money Show this evening. It was going to be about the budget. We'll find out together what it's about instead.
That's why you have to go and do your thing. This is great. I'm not sure if you're able to, before you go, I do have somebody who had a chat on the WhatsApp line and said, I have dollars and I need to bring some back to live on. Do I exchange now, Stephen, or wait till the end of the month?
I would probably wait a week or so, but I wouldn't wait too long because it is entirely possible that they reach each other by sort of Monday morning. But bear in mind that for a lot of people involved in this, there are two things you want to do. If you're John Steenhuisen or you're Enoch Godongwana or President Cyril Ramaphosa, you want to show that your vote is your constituency, that you're fighting for them, but you also want to show that you're reasonable and you want to get all of this over with as quickly as possible. So don't be surprised if they're fighting cats and dogs on Monday. Don't be surprised if they're shaking hands and friends again.
Okay, this is great. So just to kind of wrap up, I can see that there's going to be a couple of days where we're going to look at a few things, and then we can actually make some decisions on what's going to happen. I think there's a lot of anxiety on my WhatsApp line now about, I was about to buy a house call. Like, what do I do now? I was about to sell my house. Is that going to affect it? So those questions are lingering because there's this anxiety around what's happening now. But I think is it safe to say that just in the next few days, we'll know and we'll be more certain about what the markets look like before we make any knee-jerk reactions?
Yes. Sort of three quick things if I can.
Please do.
One is that instability may well lead to sort of higher inflation. Now, it's not really going to affect inflation in terms of what we notice right now. It may well affect inflation over the longer term. What it will really do is the Reserve Bank governor will be watching this and thinking, I can't really cut interest rates again. That's really what I'm getting to.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the one thing.
Okay.
The second thing is that almost anything can happen, and that's what makes it really difficult to make decisions, is that I do expect that there will be some calm, and you need to watch the sort of voices and the conversations and even the body language, because there'll be a lot of pressure on the DA to make something work. That's where things are going to manage. And then the other thing is that there are going to be other things that happen that will sort of remove this from the news agenda quite carefully. But Carl, the big takeaway for me, and I've watched our politics for a little while, watched our business for a while, is that the faith that people had in the coalition government will have been shaken in a very unexpected way, because a budget has, as you said at the beginning, never been cancelled before, never been messed with like this before, and now it can be messed with. And that will shake faith in the entire system in a very small percentage way, but it will still be there.
Well, there we have it. That's the scene set by you. Thanks a lot, Stephen, for giving us a lot more information, but just laying it out in a way that's very understandable. We'll look forward to your show a little later, as mentioned, on Cape Talk and 702, The Money Show. And thank you very much for your time. And if there's another moment where things shake up, I'd love to call upon you again for a conversation on music radio. I think it'll be nice.
Carl, you're an absolute legend, so I really appreciate it. Anything I can do to help. Thank you so much.
No problem. Stephen Grootes from The Money Show and 702 and Cape Talk. You can catch him later on Cape Talk, just unpacking a bit more. In fact, that show is still being produced as we speak, but it's going to be exciting, and there are going to be a lot more moments to unpack, and I think that's why it's good to actually sit down with that. But I thought, let me bring the man on here just to give you an idea of what's happening, why the budget speech cancellation, the anxiety you may feel if you have certain investments, if you're just interested in what's happening with the South African economy. I think it's very important to get the language there so it's understandable. I just find a lot of these moments carry with them a lot of financial jargon that makes it very, very difficult to understand. Not in my house. I like to bring people who can lay it out for you. But as you heard, next couple of days we watch very closely. If anything else pops up, I'll bring an expert again.
The Flash Drive with Carl Wastie. KFN 94.5.